Hello, and welcome to Sports Talk, The Generation Gap, Episode 8. I am here with our family. Going from youngest to oldest, we have Nick, we have Benny, myself, Bobby, Charlie, and my dad. This week, we want to talk about NCAA conference realignment. Over the last decade plus, there's been a lot of movement in the college ranks, impacting really every sport, from college football, college basketball, college hockey. And I don't know about you guys, but when I think about college sports and what draws me to it, it's all about nostalgia. I personally get more excited about college sports and watching the Gophers than I do a lot of pro sports, just because it reminds me of the college days, the good old days in school with all my friends. With all this realignment that we're seeing, do you worry at all that we might be losing some of the tradition? That we're going to lose some of those matchups that go all the way back, to the early 1900s, and that we're used to seeing every single year. If we lose some of that, is that a worry, or do you think change is good and everything will be fine moving forward? Benny, what do you think your initial thoughts are on kind of everything and the way it's developed in the last 10, 15 years?
Well, first off, I would just like to do a shout out to Team USA, since I know me and Bobby are both wearing Team USA jerseys. So there you go. Go America. But yeah, in terms of college alignment sports, I think we've already seen this occur. And for me, being someone from Kansas originally, I already see it as being detrimental to sports in college. When I think about the University of Kansas, the big rivalry historically was with the University of Missouri. And then the University of Missouri left the Big 12, and now they don't play Kansas anymore. Or if they do, it's rare, or they're running away because they're afraid of getting beaten, like in basketball. But, this is something that used to be a really big event. I remember people would go to Arrowhead Stadium where the Kansas City Chiefs play, and then go to the border showdown between the University of Kansas and the University of Missouri. And it was a huge event. People loved it. There's obviously lots of history between Missouri and Kansas going back to the American Civil War. It wasn't that long ago that Missourians went and burned down Lawrence, Kansas, where the University of Kansas is today, during the Civil War era. So, I mean, there's a lot of history and that's really there in this rivalry, and Missourians and Kansans in general don't, though they're very similar, they do have a little bit of a rivalry because of that history, but also just because of sports. And, when Missouri left, that rivalry is completely gone, and just shows that college alignment can have huge impacts on the history of schools and their rivals. And, not every college sports team is going to be competitive, but maybe they're going to have at least that one competitive game against their rival. And if that rival changes conferences, that history is gone and it becomes something of the past. And it's really hard to start some type of new rivalry to replace that. So for me, though I understand conferences, have lots of things they're going on and they're recruiting other schools, and schools are thinking about money. It's really a shame for me when I see conference changes like that destroy rivalries. So,
Yeah, it's interesting with KU and Missouri. That when Missouri left for the SEC, Kansas essentially decided, hey, we're just not going to play anymore. They actually refused to play Missouri in anything for years. They finally recently renewed the basketball rivalry, and they have plans to renew the football rivalry. So they're going to start playing each other again, and there's just so much demand for it that you pretty much have to. But there is some sentiment in Lawrence that we should not be helping out Missouri at this point. They left, screw them. We shouldn't be catering to them and be willing to play them still, because they're the ones that left. So it's interesting kind of how that dynamic is happening. In hockey, I saw it with the Big Ten form. uh, the WCHA conference was so big, so popular for so long. You had all these Minnesota schools together playing each other. And then the Big Ten Hockey Conference forms. Minnesota joins that, along with Wisconsin, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State. And you started to lose some of those in-state rivalries, especially in Minnesota, and the fans were pissed off. Like there were, Minnesota really struggled with attendance for years after that. People are finally starting to come around to the Big Ten because it's gotten more competitive. But there is always a risk there when you mess with tradition. So it'll be interesting to see how all that unfolds in other sports as well. Charlie, what do you think about all this? I mean, there hasn't been too much of this yet in the Big Ten. We've added some schools. Now we're going to be adding USC and UCLA, so that'll be interesting. But how do you see this from a Big Ten's perspective and things like that?
Well, as a Badger fan, and I think probably my perspective might be similar to that held by fans of other Big Ten schools. I'd say so far it's been maybe a push, if not even a net positive. So if I look over history, the Big Ten, they added Penn State and Nebraska. Okay, those were good ads. Those added fun games to the Wisconsin schedule. Maryland and Rutgers, not so much. I think they weakened things a little bit. But I would say I'm excited about the addition of USC and UCLA. I look forward to seeing them here. I look forward to traveling there. So I think that spices things up a little bit. The the Big Ten recently revealed its plan to they're going to dissolve the divisions, but they're going to protect either 2 or 3 rivalry games for each team. So I think we're still going to play Minnesota. We're still going to play Iowa. So those games are intact. So overall, I think it's a pretty good thing as a Big Ten fan.
Yeah, I think the Big Ten hasn't felt the hurt of this as much. They haven't been losing teams really, like some other conferences have. Big 12 lost Missouri, and now they're going to be losing Texas and Oklahoma, and they're trying to kind of regroup with some smaller schools like South Florida and Cincinnati. Pac-12 obviously is gonna feel this a lot, losing 2 of their signature schools. So I wonder how fans of USC and UCLA feel about this, whether they're going to be upset about losing those rivalries or whether they're excited to join the Big Ten. Ultimately, for the Big Ten, I think it's mostly been good. Rutgers and Maryland, haven't added a whole lot. You add East Coast market a little bit, but not a ton of tradition there, at least in the major sports. But Big Ten and myself, being a Minnesota fan, I haven't lost any of my personal rivalries. None of my teams are exiting. It'll be interesting to see where this goes if we end up with super conferences and what all shakes out. But luckily for me personally and the Big Ten, it hasn't been bad yet. Dad, now going way back, to the beginnings of college football and formations of the conferences, there's always been change to a degree. There were some, conferences way back, like the Big Eight and things like that no longer exist or, kind of changed over time. What are your thoughts on how rapidly this has started to pick up as far as the change goes in the last, 10 years or so?
Right now, this has the feel that commercialism has kind of run rampant. And for me personally, as somebody who feels really engaged with college football traditions, it's a little unsettling. You throw in the betting, the NIL, you wonder, well, where's all this headed? What's it really going to be about? With players now switching schools much more frequently, you start to wonder, well, gee, if the players don't care where they play, why should the fans care? This raises issues with respect to those kind of emotional connections that we form with teams. I grew up by virtue of games that my father took me to, and so as a small kid, I went to Dartmouth games, and, got acquainted with Ivy League football. And then we moved to Wisconsin, and for a number of years went to Wisconsin games, became familiar with the Big Ten, and it was all about rivalries. And those, there are a lot of games that I still vividly remember. So the letting the tradition slip just a little bit raises some questions. Now, tradition games, traditional rivalries are going to be in many cases intact. Although the way you feel about the league standings may change. They're no longer divisions, and admittedly, to me, even when they created the divisions, say in the Big Ten, it felt a little artificial, and it didn't really seem to matter much. It would get you into the Big Ten championship game, but if you were played in the West, that just meant you were going to be a sacrificial lamb for Ohio State most years. So none of that completely clicked for me. I'm not sure that seeing Ohio State, Michigan play consecutive weekends at the end of the year is going to do a whole lot for me either. And that's a spectacle that we could well be seeing. Now, for USC, UCLA, there is a connection there. Historically, most of the Rose Bowls were played against USC or UCLA, and at least the Big Ten and the what was the Pac-12 have a historical connection. But this is all a little bit murky. For me, hey, at least the Ivy League is still intact. They don't add, they don't subtract. Heck, they don't play postseason games. My feelings about the Ivy League are actually a little schizophrenic, because I think the league itself is schizophrenic. They want to be good, but then they do a whole lot of things to make sure they're only so good, not really, really good. And among those things is they don't allow postseason. It can be little things like they won't allow graduate students to play. So now the Ivy League is in the business of sending off lots of guys who graduate early to play in other conferences. I mean, Dartmouth had 9 guys go play for FBS schools last year, and a lot of them stepped right in to starting roles. I mean, they were immediately impact players on their new teams. So the only good thing that comes out of this for the Ivy League is that there's a little more regard for folks who play there. But it's a strange scenario. Now, we still have the Army-Navy game, which is probably the central traditional game, and I'm starting to think now that that's going to be on my bucket list of games I've got to attend. Now, I attended a few Army U.S. Military Academy games back when I was in grad school at Yale, and it was not that far away. So if Yale didn't have a home game, I'd maybe drive to West Point, and that was a whole lot of fun. And you absolutely cannot beat the pageantry and tradition that goes with those games. So right now, I guess I'm a little unsettled by all these changes. I'm fretting just a bit where college football might be headed. Then again, the pull of college football is still pretty strong, so we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and if we end up with super conferences at some point, there's even been talk of some of the top 3 or 4 conferences trying to break away from the NCAA entirely and having their own essential league. And then what happens? You think about that would really wreck the NCAA basketball tournament and all kinds of things. So it does kind of seem a little bit concerning where things could potentially be trending someday. Now, Nick, you're the closest one out of college. So a lot of these changes have been happening while you were in school. Was there any sense from the student body there and the fans in Madison about some of these changes and the new teams Wisconsin were playing? What were some of the thoughts there on the campuses?
I think a lot of it was probably excitement. I think it's a matter of a lot of these realignments driven, primarily by college football. It's a matter of kind of what side of it you're on. If you're a strong brand like UCLA or USC, in a relatively fledgling conference like the Pac-12, you kind of need to get out, before it's too late. So if you're in the Big Ten or the SEC, it could be relatively exciting. You've got some new matchups. If you're the Pac-12, or maybe the ACC, or definitely the Big 12, you're definitely, you might be kind of the odd man out. Now, I don't know if that's a good thing to have those new matchups. Bob's point about the kind of emotional tie to these matchups, these rivalries, these traditions, along with the kind of fluidity of player movement, and now team movement to conferences, with that kind of degrading that emotional connection. I do worry about the product itself. At what point does college football just become, a lower tier professional league compared to the NFL? I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but I think the product itself is really tied to kind of the specialty of it. So allowing too much commercialization may not be a good play in the long run.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes over the next several years. Because there is a little worry if it starts to seem like a minor league more than a college atmosphere. If you lose the atmosphere and the tradition of college sports, you're in big trouble. It'll be interesting to see how all this goes. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're not going to lose everything, but yeah, 20 years things could look completely different. So should be interesting. But with that, Charlie, you want to take us through the drinking segment?
Of course, yep. So I'll start with my own beverage. A little backstory here. I set a personal improvement goal this year of having 100 dry days. Now, not consecutive, but cumulatively over the course of the year. Okay. So I keep track of this. Currently, I'm at 45. We're coming up on the midpoint of the year, and I'm going to be a little behind pace. And I was worried about tonight. I thought I'd like to get number 46 because I know what's coming up the next week or so. It's going to be difficult to chalk up many more. So I'm going non-alcoholic this evening. I'm drinking something called Green Canvas. Okay. It's 10 calories. It's organic. It's vegan. It's low carb. It also happens to have 3 milligrams of THC and 18 milligrams of CBD. So a friend of mine introduced me to it. He said he had a couple of them about a month ago, and he was high as a kite. So we'll see how tonight's show unfolds. I don't know if I like the taste of it that much, but I like the concept. So are there any other THC, CBD drinkers this evening? Apparently not. Nick, it looked like you had another Bud Light. Is that possible?
Yeah. I expressed last week my discontentment with the fact that Bud Light has been overtaken by a non-US beer. That's really been bothering me, so I will continue to support Bud Light until they reclaim their spot at the top.
Good. So you're expressing your patriotism by drinking that. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, how about you?
Well, Charlie, by the way, I must say, like, it's this explains a lot. I will say, from your drink choice, and habits. Anyway, so yeah, I too have a story to tell, actually, to my dear fans out there. Hello. But first off, a long time ago, about last week, actually, a certain person on this podcast decided to, publicly shame me in terms of my golf knowledge. Charlie, this would be you, of course, saying that I know nothing about golf. Yet here I am wearing my normal, actual, real hair while you are wearing a wig, because my golf choice actually finished better than yours, which was last out of the group, along with my delusional father and cousin and uncle who has inexplicably just left. I don't know where he is. He's probably hiding somewhere. But so I just wanted to point that out. And because of this, I decided to choose a nice bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon today from California called Dark Horse, which I think pretty much sums it up. And yes, this one can be found, let's see, somewhere out there in California, which just has lots of wine. Oh yes, Modesto, California. So for those other dark horses out there who have uncles saying that you're not good enough, this is for you.
Wow, I didn't realize you take things so personally. Okay, Bob, with that mop on top of your head, what are you drinking tonight?
Last week I had a very small bottle. You'll recall that was a Chardonnay by the Con Crum winery in Bulgaria. So this week I decided to go big. This is Sutter Home, California Merlot. You already know I like small compact bottles, but sometimes a big bottle is the way to go. Now, the truth is I saw some even larger bottles in the my local liquor store, but I couldn't figure out how I would put them in the refrigerator. So this is my choice for this evening. Another advantage of this is that this will probably last me past the 4th of July. So, like Charlie, I, kind of measured consumer. I think you enjoy it more that way. But anyway, this is fine stuff for me. If you, like me, don't have a particularly discriminating palate, it's awesome.
Bobby?
So tonight I am going with a beer called Zombie Ice. Pretty cool name, pretty cool can that Benny actually got me when he was in town recently. It's made by the Three Floyds brewery in Munster, Indiana, which may explain the naming of the beer. But yeah, it's IPA. It's pretty good stuff, and yeah, one of the more impressive bottles that I've seen, or cans rather. So pretty good stuff.
It's a pretty good brewery, actually.
Oh, you're familiar with it?
I've had quite a few of their beers. Yeah, you see their beers all over Wisconsin. Good stuff.
Very good. Well, I suppose now that we have that out of the way, we can move on to my dad, see what he's got as far as any sort of sports report outside of the ordinary and mainstream.
Outside of the usual stuff, well, let's go to deep tradition one more time. Since 1894, there has been a more or less annual track meet in which a combined team from Harvard and Yale, it sounds like an oxymoron almost, a combined team from Harvard and Yale faces a combined team from Oxford and Cambridge. The Harvard-Yale version has won the last 14 of these meets, but you never know. I know that the Harvard-Yale roster, which I saw today, does not include Harvard's NCAA champion miler, Maya Ramsden. So who knows? We'll see about the outcome. I also wanted to call out a local event. Couldn't pass it up because it happened right here in my backyard, practically, or just down the street at Benny's high school alma mater. There was the Fighting Fentanyl 5K run. So I couldn't just watch it happen. I had to participate. And out of around 500 finishers, I got 124th overall, 88th as a male runner, and second in my age group, which was a little disappointing. I ran a poor tactical race by starting, they have you line up self-organized. So that if you think you're going to be among the elite runners, you scoot up near the front, have a good starting position, and make sure you're not blocked. Now, I played it kind of conservative and paid for it. It took me at least the first half mile to weave my way through traffic so I could run more or less freely. So that's a mistake I won't repeat in next year's event. This was, by the way, organized just last year. So this was the second iteration this time. A youngster from Mill Valley High School, Cooper Davis, died from fentanyl poisoning in 2021. And so his family decided to put this together. Right here in Johnson County, they noted that just last year we had 66 teenagers die of fentanyl poisoning. So this is a cause that is getting attention. And so I figured that it was worth a little support.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Now, Benny kind of teased at this a little bit, but Charlie, you want to take us through the US Open and how that finished up and kind of what kind of led to what you guys are wearing this evening?
Sure. So it was pretty interesting Open. Played at LA Country Club. Ordinarily, the US Open is known for really high winning scores. Sometimes it might be even par or just a little bit better than a win. First round, 2 players shot 62, 8 under par. And I think there was quite a bit of angst that this year's iteration might not follow with tradition, but the course hung in there. The winning score ended up being, I believe, was it 10 under? So 11 under. Thank you, Nick. So scores did not improve by much. Ricky Fowler, who would have been an incredibly popular winner had he hung on, he led after the first, second, and third rounds. Ricky kind of fell off the map for a few years. He's had a great comeback this year. He's always been, he's always a kind of a cool persona, but he's just a real class act. He's handles himself so well with the media. He's never said the wrong thing. He always shows up for interviews. He's the consummate professional. Fans were pulling for him, but he stumbled on the last day, shot a 5 over par 75. And the guy he was tied with going into the last round is named Wyndham Clark. Wyndham won for the first time in early May. He won at the Wells Fargo, which was against one of the toughest fields of the year. And, there's always somebody who's a bit of a surprise that's in contention in every major. And I would say 95 times out of 100, that player will stumble. I think most golf fans expected that would happen again. And Clark just hung in there, and he was steady as a rock, made some great par saves down the stretch. And while Fowler's faded away and Rory McIlroy couldn't quite hole enough putts, same with Scotty Scheffler. And Clark showed some big stones on the final hole. He 2-putted from 60 feet away with thousands of people surrounding the green, and he walked away with the title. So more importantly, when it came to our predictions, obviously nobody picked Wyndham Clark. I would say the 4 of us picked Brooks Koepka, who I think ended, say, in a tie for 17th or something, 1 under par. He just never got it going. Bobby, I think you did slightly better with Dustin Johnson, right? And then Ben, I would say really based on no knowledge of his own, probably just going out and reading stuff and seeing what everybody else was saying. He picked one with the safe pick, Scotty Scheffler. Super impressive on Ben's part. And so therefore he was most successful, and he doesn't get to wear a wig. I think it's really fun. I've enjoyed wearing this wig immensely. I'm just going to start. I might go with wigs every time. So too bad for you.
Love it.
Yeah.
So who's the world number 1 right now?
Well, I think it's Scotty. Scotty and then Rob.
Yeah. So real impressive pick, man. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of jealousy out there. Me and Scotty go way back, and sorry, tough luck, guys. Next time, pick better people.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, speaking of predictions, we should probably get into some stuff we really all know a lot about. We'll start off with Major League Soccer. And I think we're going with the conference winners and the best record overall for the regular season. We're already well underway, so that should help you guys a little bit. But Charlie, what are you thinking?
Well, I learned that the MLS, they play 34 games, 17 home, 17 away. And I looked at the current standings, and it wasn't going to be like Ben and just pick the teams that are at the top currently. So I went with Nashville because I like their music. And I went with Seattle because they seem like they need something good to happen as a city. So we're going Nashville and Seattle, with Nashville winning the championship.
All right, very good. Nick, what do you think?
I also learned a lot about MLS this week. A lot of team names, cities I didn't know had teams. I also actually picked the same two, different reasons though. You know, I think some of the best spicy hot chicken comes out of Nashville, and I think that's going to fuel their team. I think they're going to get on. They're going to catch on fire pretty soon here. And then on the West, you know, similarly, I think, you know, caffeine is important to withstand a 90-minute soccer game. I think the city where Starbucks is born, I think they're going to fuel Seattle to the West Division Championship, the conference championship. And then I got Seattle to win overall.
All right, interesting. Dad, what do you think?
Well, having seen very little of the MLS the past several years, I took a look at the standings today, and it was kind of a revelation. I thought, gee whiz, a lot has changed. The Sporting Kansas City is no longer mired at the bottom of their division. They've moved up towards the middle of the pack, but I still have trouble envisioning them getting back to the glory days and winning. So, I mean, to me, it looks like Cincinnati holds commanding position in the East and is likely to hold it. St. Louis, with a fairly new team, is tied for the lead in the West, and I think St. Louis is going to make a run to the top. There's a lot of momentum, and St. Louis has long been a hotbed of soccer. The University of St. Louis was a college soccer powerhouse for the longest time, and they've for decades had strong youth programs. Not that that funnels directly into the MLS team, because it doesn't. But there's a level of interest, and St. Louis is probably deserving of a champion.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, this is St. Louis's first season, so that would be pretty ridiculous. Benny, what do you think?
Yeah, so a little bit different picks, though some similarities. In the Eastern Conference, I do got to go with FC Cincinnati. FC Cincinnati has been pretty good the few years it's been in the league. They've only lost one game this year, so you know they're looking like a powerhouse in the East. In the Western Conference, I'm going to go with LAFC. They've only lost a couple games. They also have Dennis Bouanga, who's one of the top scorers in the MLS. Last year, they finished in first, and they also won the championship last year. Also, it's been about 10 years since someone's won back-to-back championships. So I think that they're probably going to end up winning the championship as well. Last one to do it was the LA Galaxy. So it'd be interesting if another LA team were to do that. But LA consistently has one of the top soccer teams, it seems like, consistently most years. So.
Okay, yeah, I have to agree with Cincinnati. They have such a big lead right now. It's going to be hard for anybody to catch up. So yeah, I have Cincinnati winning their conference and finishing with the best record in the league in the season. In the West, though, I have San Jose Earthquakes. I lived in San Jose for a while. It's real hotbed for soccer for sure, and they have a good young team that's really making some noise and coming back after a few down years. So I like the San Jose Earthquakes to creep towards the top at the end of the season. So moving on to Wimbledon. the most famous tennis tournament we have coming up here starts, I believe, 4th of July weekend or somewhere around there, right before it. But Benny, what are you thinking for the Wimbledon tournament, men's and women's winners?
Well, I must say I've been really, really looking forward to this for a long time. Wimbledon, it's big deal. So in terms of men's tennis, I will say that I'll probably go with the choice that any sane person will make, and that's Novak Djokovic, who is pretty much a beast. All you have to do is just, if you've heard of his name, that's probably because he wins all the time. He already won the Australian and French Open, and all he does is win. So got to go with him. He also won the Wimbledon last year, so I wouldn't be surprised if he wins it again. For the women's division, I'm going to go with out of Kazakhstan, Elena Rybakina, who won it last year. She's ranked 3rd overall and is only 23 years old, so she could be dominant for years to come.
All right, so we'll move on to Dad so he can correct your pronunciation, because I'm pretty sure you brutalized that.
Wasn't too bad. Well, I agree with Ben entirely with regard to Djokovic. He's ridiculous. There's no evidence that he's slipping, so you can almost chalk that up. He is truly formidable. On the women's side, I'll try Coco Gauff. Long shot. The women's side is always less predictable. It seems, at least since the Williams sisters stopped owning women's tennis. There are a lot more surprises on that side of the bracket. So she's up in the leader group most of the time, but she's looking for a breakthrough. This will be it.
All right, Nick, what are you thinking?
Likewise, I'll have Novak Djokovic extend his Grand Slam lead. And then I've got Naomi Osaka, an American, I believe. So
that sounds correct. I'm pretty sure you're right. All right, Charlie, what are you thinking?
On the men's side, I'm going to go with Holger Rune. I think Djokovic is going to get hurt.
Injury. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that might be the only thing that slows him down.
Yeah. A huge injury fan there.
Yeah. So I'm going with that. I think this could be a breakthrough pick for me that could launch me onto maybe a bigger podcast. And then I'm also going to go with Coco Gauff. This seems like a time for a good feel-good American story on the female side of Wimbledon. So I like Coco.
Interesting.
Correction. Naomi Osaka is Japanese born.
Okay, there you go. Good. We got the fact checker ready to go. But yeah, so it's really hard to pick against Djokovic. I think he's won 4 straight at Wimbledon. But since nobody else picked him, I think I'm going to change course and go with Alcaraz, who's the young guy from Spain who has been turning some heads, and he hasn't quite broken through yet, but he gave Djokovic a run for his money recently. So I like Alcaraz from Spain to pick up, I believe would be his first major win. And then on the women's side, I'm going to go with Iga Swiatek of Poland. I've been to Poland, pretty cool place, really good food. So I'm going to go with the Polish winner on that one. So with all that, we can move on to what we have in the world of sports. I feel like Benny probably has something.
Yeah, so in terms of sports news, some kind of various interesting things. Recently I started playing cricket a little bit. with some friends I've made from Bangladesh. They say that I might be the next Michael Jordan of cricket. So we'll see. Future career, maybe. Anyway, no, they said I played pretty well. But Major League Cricket actually is coming to the US. We're going to have our first ever cricket league starting in July. There's to be 6 teams in the country. LA, New York City, I think Texas has one, and a few other places. But yes, we're going to have a Major League Cricket now in the United States, given that is one of the most popular sports in the world. And if you think about just the large number of immigrants now in the U.S. from the Indian subcontinent, for example, there's actually a fair amount of cricketers now in the U.S. and people who are interested in the sport in the United States. So that's pretty cool. One other sports league now coming to America. Additionally, the United States beat Mexico and Canada to win the CONCACAF Nations League Cup. So pretty cool to see the United States continue to dominate North American competition, especially Mexico, who we've now beaten several times in a row. So the U.S., I think, is finally taking that next leap forward to being one of the better teams in the world. So it's good to see. In terms of NBA news, some of you might be aware that Bradley Beal got recently traded from the Wizards to the Suns. So the Suns now with Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. That's a pretty big, big 3 there. So we'll see how that adds up next season. They did trade Chris Paul, who obviously is pretty old, but Suns are looking interesting. So we'll see, though, if they can get past the Nuggets, which might be hard to do. Lastly, in the MLS, I know we talked about Inter Miami last week getting Lionel Messi. Well, they've actually recently added now one of Messi's former teammates from Barcelona, Sergio Busquets, who's also in his 30s, not really past his prime yet. A very dominant midfielder, in fact, considered one of the greatest midfielders of all time. So Inter Miami is really trying to build something for, what is going to be, I guess, Messi's going to debut in July. So they're looking to make a big push to get back into the playoff hunt with all these international superstars coming. So,
yeah, Miami's currently in last place in the East, but yeah, it was a long way to go. And a lot of teams make the playoffs in the MLS, I discovered. It's I think it's 18 or something ridiculous like that. So yeah, anything's possible, I suppose. Benny, is there any finalization on the Porzingis to the Celtics trade? Is that happening? I heard some rumors.
I haven't heard that being official,
Okay.
but that would certainly be unique. I'm not sure what the Celtics would be giving up. I'd be curious to know what the rumor is on that, but yeah, that would be very different. I'm not sure what to even make of that.
I
Stay
think
tuned for that.
the primary piece would be Malcolm Brogdon.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
probably a good deal for the Celtics.
yeah, that might work. I mean, I know the Celtics are pretty deep in terms of guards, so they might just feel like shedding Brogdon for another big could be useful, especially in what appears to be now a big dominated league. If you're going by the Nuggets season, so yeah, we'll see.
Very good. Charlie, got anything extra for us?
Yeah, the golf focus turns to the ladies this week. They have one of their majors, the KPMG PGA Championship, being played at Baltusrol in New Jersey. And a lot of eyes are going to be on Rose Zhang. She turned pro just a couple weeks ago. She won in her professional debut, the first woman to do that in 72 years. She comes to the ladies tour with a Tiger-esque type resume. It's probably the biggest thing since Michelle Wie. Michelle kind of flamed out, never lived up to her potential, but Rose winning right out of the chute was certainly an explosive bit of news on the LPGA tour. So we'll see if she can do it again this weekend.
Yeah, that's why she was playing at Stanford, and she's essentially going to be leaving Stanford now. Is that correct? Or she?
Yeah, I think she played.
I
think she was at Stanford for 2 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to keep track of.
Yeah.
Dad, what do you have?
Well, I'll take it back to soccer where Benny was. You know, like you, Bobby, watched the USA games against Mexico and Canada. This is the most dominant looking USA national soccer team I can remember seeing. And it's the best front line we've ever put out there. The acquisition of Balogun to go along with Pulisic and a few others. Gio Reyna was brilliant. Gives the U.S. Some hope for the World Cup that we'll be hosting in the not too distant future. So in terms of timing, it's excellent. The decision to return Berhalter to the coaching position is still being assessed. And obviously there's going to be some fence mending that goes along with that. But we'll see. It's going to be a very interesting couple of years for the U.S. national team.
Hey, Bob, what's the deal with Reyna? Because he was sort of a malcontent
Yeah,
during the World
yeah.
Cup, and I saw
Exactly.
as
And
well that he had a great.
he and the coach
Yeah.
didn't hit it off at all, so they're going to have to fix that.
Yep.
But he's a terrific talent, and I didn't fully appreciate it till I watched these last two games. He is phenomenal. He's fast, incredible control of the ball, and he's very young. The beauty of this U.S. team also is that its best players are all young. I mean, Pulisic is the old man at 24. So they're going to grow into this and become a really formidable unit. This is an opportunity like I don't think the U.S. has had before.
Yeah, pretty impressive young group they put together. Yeah, I mean, Reyna's 20. Balogun is 21. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous the cast that they've put together. So we just got to make sure we get it right because we're hosting the next World Cup. This is our shot. So it'll be interesting to see how things go in the next couple of years as they prepare. I have a couple things. So the NHL draft is going to be next week, and we're going to have our next generational talent is going to be picked. Connor Bedard. He's been breaking records in juniors at the World Junior Championships. He was a dominant force, and the Chicago Blackhawks won the NHL draft lottery, and so they will be getting Connor Bedard and their next superstar. I mean they're already putting him in the same class as McDavid, Crosby as far as talent level. So it'll be real fun to watch him in his first season. It's unfortunate that he's going to end up with the Chicago Blackhawks. Last thing they need is another generational talent just for free, but that's how the lottery goes. So one better note for me, at least, is recently University of Minnesota Golden Gopher football team got a commitment from a 4-star offensive tackle named Nathan Roy, who is the #1 overall player in the state of Wisconsin and is committed to the Gophers. And it was also interesting that I noticed, kind of looking at those recruiting rankings and who's committed and things like that, it appears the top 4 Wisconsin players have committed to other schools. Top 1 going to the Gophers, and then the next 3 going to Penn State. So I don't know if the Badger alums have anything to say about that, but figured I would bring it.
No, I mean, that's an issue for another day, is admission standards at University of Wisconsin. None of those guys could get in. So yeah, you're making a great point.
All right. I've got to have some excuse, I suppose. Nick, you got anything?
I've got a little nugget. I just gathered. Kind of relating to the our conversation about declining viewership in the regular season of NBA, baseball. I'll kind of flip this to the NHL. I'm sure this has something to do with competition with the NBA finals, but apparently the Pinstripe Bowl last year featuring Minnesota and Syracuse actually had greater viewership than the clinching finals matchup in the NHL. So could just be a viewership competition with the NBA finals, but NHL might have an issue there. Unless
Yeah.
Pinstripe Bowl is just that compelling.
I mean, the Gophers were in it, so that's probably a
Right.
big plus. But
Yeah, and Syracuse, two strong story football programs.
big alumni bases. But I think the biggest issue with the NHL, I mean, you can't even use the NBA as an excuse because they were playing on alternate days. They were alternating. They didn't really have too many games on the same night. I don't think they had any in the finals. The issue with the NHL, or at least this year, it was the teams that were involved. It was the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights, which is just doesn't draw a lot of fan interest. The Panthers, have never really been that good for the most part. They certainly don't have wide appeal, and the Golden Knights are a new team. So that was the biggest problem. Some of the NHL playoff games in general, they didn't do this in the finals, but some of the playoff games before that were just at ridiculous times. Like, a 9 o'clock game on a Sunday, like why? So I think the NHL has some things to work out there, but yeah, that's not great numbers. So Gary Bettman will have to get that figured out.
Definitely.
Very, very good. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Till next time, that is Sports Talk, The Generation Gap, signing off.